Hi Norok, I'm Horia Markan. So, as I imagine you're probably listening to right now, right? I've decided to do something a bit different this episode, and you will shortly find out why. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for the 100 subs. As the meme says, it's not much, but it's honest work. And based on that, I've decided to celebrate, if you will, the milestone we've just passed with the channel by doing a different kind of episode. So that's why we're talking in English. We're talking in English because I've put out a game. Yay! We're gonna talk about it. The game is in the English language. I thought it would be more accessible to the general public this way, and not a very niche of a niche kind of thing, even though it is a pretty narrow field of interest that it targets, but we'll just have to see what happens, I guess, right? So what happened was, seeing as how Halloween is coming, and well, it's gonna be a while till it comes, but I'm a huge Halloween nerd, so I get excited about Halloween being on its way, starting on the 1st of September, right? That and plus the 100 subs, I thought, okay, let's break it up a bit. For those of you who haven't been following the podcast or are new to it, I've been doing a series on how to GM, starting from absolutely no experience in the Romanian language, and I felt it was a good time to break it up a little bit. The milestone gave me a good reason to do so, and the incoming favorite time of the year, for me at least, gave me a very good context. So what I decided to do was bring together some things that are near and dear to my cold, black, rotted, and undead heart, which would be the 24XX or 2400 rule system, which is a TTRPG rule system we'll be talking about. I'm a big fan of. The Resident Evil series, which is probably my favorite video game series. And this here podcast that you're listening to. So, let's see what happened. But before we do that though, I'm going to once again remind everyone, check out the Patreon, like this wherever you listen to it, share it, subscribe if possible. That would be a huge help, and if a lot of English speakers show up, who knows? Maybe we'll do more English content if you're down with what's going on right here. Cool. So, what is this game? What's going on with it? This game, which I'm calling Biological Hazard, pun on the original Japanese Biohazard title that the Resident Evil games had. This is a hack of the 24XX free SRD, system reference document, based on, see the credits in the game also, mostly Resident Evil, George A. Romero's Dead films. Okay, so Night of the Living Dead, the one he did, the first one he did with Russo as a co-director. Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead, and so on. These zombie films, let's call them social satire zombie films, right? Okay. The Walking Dead, primarily the graphic novels, the first omnibus, and the Telltale adventure games. I think I played the first season of The Walking Dead, the Telltale version. It was fun, it was okay. Should check out the second one, I guess. And, well, the similar zombie media, I guess, 28 Days Later, the Resident Evil films, which I saw a few of. They're definitely some of the films of all time. That's about it. Obviously, Night of the Living Dead, the Russo Living Dead films, if you want to go that route. Okay, so that's, shall we say, the media, the, aesthetics and narrative inspirations underpinning this game. Mostly Resident Evil, with some other horror nerd interests thrown in there for good measure. Now, 24xx, let's give it a few minutes of attention, shall we? 24xx is, I believe, an interesting rule set because it skews very close to the FKR mindset, right? This very minimally defined and codified way of looking at the RPG experience, right? But still retaining some minimal rules, right? I've seen it described as having a bit of Powered by the Apocalypse in its DNA. I'm not really seeing it as far as I know about the PBTA and FITD games. They have these narrative mechanics that I'm not a fan of. We'll be talking about them. Apparently there's a bit of Powered by the Apocalypse in its DNA. Jason Tocci, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I'm gonna pronounce it Italianly because, well, Mr. Tocci on the 24xx Cord, right, the community's official Discord, never really clearly defined, never clearly labeled where to put 24xx. Is it an OSR game? Is it an NSR game? Is it one of these free Kriegspiel type games? Does it really matter? No. Not really. What matters is you experience the thing, right? There's a lot of hacks of this. I really like them. I've been messing with it myself, as you can see. The core of it, however, you can find on itch.io. There's gonna be a lot of itch.io links in the description part of this episode, right? I very much recommend the core of it, especially the so-called emergency rules that Mr. Tocci provides, right? Let's say a more detailed way of looking at the game and what you can do with it practically, right? I myself have been using this for a steampunk game that I've been running for a couple of weeks now. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I like its very loose, very narrative-driven approach, but one that is, as previously discussed, not constrained by narrative mechanics, right? So you don't have the playbooks that you would have in a Powered by the Apocalypse game. You don't act from a certain narrative position as you would in Blades in the Dark, right? You roll to avoid risk. Sometimes you are helped, sometimes you are hindered, and the better you are at the thing, the bigger the die you roll, right? That's it. It's relatively simple. There's some more rules, but generally 24xx or 2400 is the kind of TTRPG whose rules actually get out of your way, right? And actually let you tell the story you want to tell. Now, this FKR scene, or this FKR stands for Free Kriegspiel Revolution, right? Or Forget Crunchy Rules. I think the official Discord is titled at the moment. It's a very high trust playstyle, a playstyle with minimal rules, and one in which these minimal rules are decided by the referee or the game master or whatever you want to call that person, right? On the spot. A very emergent play style, right? The way I've talked about this on my channel before, the way, Dave Arneson or David Wesley would play before the codification of rules in AD&D 1E, right? Even if you look at 0E D&D, it still has a very loosey-goosey way of looking at things, right? There's mantras or maxims or, let's call them directions, guidelines, such as play worlds, not rules, right? Or every book is a source book, if you're so inclined, right? You just pick up a novel off your shelf and read it, and there you go. That's your source book for the game. Very minimal, very narratively driven, obviously, because There's no mechanicals or very little. I don't think there's any mechanical manipulation to get in your way, right? I'm not sure if you can play these types of games as a power gamer. I mean, you can, but it breaks so quickly that it's no longer fun to do so, right? Okay. So it's a very high trust playstyle. It's a playstyle that breaks quickly. It works on as Jason Tocci puts it in the emergency rules. Cheerlead tend to rule in favor of your players and so on. Obviously, we return to a favorite proverb here on the channel. Don't play with assholes, right? If you play with people who are there to troll or, have their fun at the expense of the other people at the table, these games are susceptible to that. So keep that in mind, right? As an aside, maybe I'll do a whole thing on 24XX and the larger, the FKR at large in English or Romanian, depending on results. So, if you feel like it, drop me a line down there in the comments section and do let me know. I'm very much at a crossroads with the channel right now, with the podcast. Let me know, right? Cool. Okay, so what did I do exactly? What's up with this 4-page PDF? First of all the 24XX individual games, there's a lot of these and you can mix and match them, right? They all tend to be like on 4 pages with tables on the last one, right? I really wanted to keep the original 2400 or 24XX layout as much as possible. I did tweak it a bit because I tend to talk a lot more than Jason Tocci does. He's much more concise than I am, and I'll never get to be as to the point as he is, which obviously is to his credit and not mine. Okay, so what did I do? Obviously I played a lot of Resident Evil. I watched a lot of zombie movies. I read some comics. I recommend you do the same as I always do. Get familiar with the source material, understand what's going on, get a feel for the type of situations you'll be coming up with for your players, obviously, right? Step 2. Get the 24XX SRD. It's gonna also be down there. It's free. Check it out. All the rules are also in Biological Hazard in my game, so you don't need to, but I really recommend you do. The SRD is designed for science fiction, space opera type stuff. Very hackable, right? Check it out, have a look, and then maybe look at the 2400 anthology at large. There's like 20 plus PDFs in that whole package, which range from space truckers or a space opera type of game to cyberpunk to roadside picnic like zone exploration, post-apocalyptic, and even weirder stuff than that. I'm very fond of it myself. I really, really, really dig it, and I recommend you check it out too. Furthermore, here's where I stole mechanics from, right? So I stole hits from 1940X by Thursday Garreau. All of these are going to be down there in the description. So hits from 1940X by Thursday Garreau. It's a noir game. It also has a companion for even more house rules and stuff like that. Check it out. I liked it. It also, obviously, if it ends in X, it's probably a hack of 24XX, right? Okay. Biocalypse by Club Zero, which is like it's an outlier and a very interesting one, taxonomically, if you look at these RPGs. It's a 2d6 based game, straight up imitating Resident Evil. I got some ideas from there, and the optional panic system, right? You might also want to take a look at Super Bandit by Biocalypse by Club Zero, in case I didn't mention. You might also want to take a look at Super Bandit by Adam Schwaninga. for the, gunfight, well, ship fight, in his case. And Gunmetal, Static, and Neon by Michael Crowley, which adapts his, dogfighting rules in space for firefight type scenarios. And that's where I took a look at the gunfight rules, which are interesting. I don't know if I would use them myself, but if you have a higher tolerance than me for rule play, let's call it, maybe you could check that out. Gunmetal, Static, and Neon by Michael Crowley also gave me the idea of using the cover as extra space for rules, right? So I'm not that clever. I didn't come up with that. I stole it from Mr. Crowley. Okay. Also, another thing I did with this game was to add in optional rules, like hit locations. If you want to use that, you don't know where a bullet lands on a zombie, there you go, blammo, roll a d8, you're done. Also, taking inspiration from some other more D&D like games I dig, for example, Index Card RPG, I'm a big fan of that. I got distance is time, right? So using distance as in how many turns would the monster be next to you. Okay, so how much time would it take to move from point A to point B? Abstract, zone-based movement, which I believe works especially well for this type of game, but also in a more D&D-like type of game. Obviously, this distances time approach allows you, if you're into that, also allows you to use miniatures. If you have a lot of nice looking zombie miniatures and some soldier or modern style miniatures, you could use those, and I imagine have a lot of fun with this. Okay, I also put in a guide which I believe is more important than the optional rules, to say the least. A guide to what I call the horror action spectrum, which we'll be returning to. It's a very important thing for Resident Evil especially. And also the typical 4 D20 tables on the last page, with which, Resident Evil fans or zombie horror movie fans like myself will have some fun with, I hope. Okay, let's talk about the horror action spectrum for a second. So, the Resident Evil games are on such a spectrum, I feel, right? So some of them, like obviously the first one, the first one's remake, RE2 make, RE3, not so much. You're starting to, see a little bit how it leans more towards action, starting with Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and especially the remake of Nemesis. Resident Evil 7, also very, very horror leaning, right? Probably the scariest out of all of these. Also, you have some of them who lean in more of an action direction, right? So Resident Evil 4, 5, 6, regardless how you feel about them, those are obviously action games, right? They're not horror games, or at least I myself don't view them that way. So, the extra guidelines under the horror/action, heading, those are there for your entire group. I've put them there for your entire group because to land as close as possible to where you want to land on this entire horror action spectrum, right? And especially in this type of TTRPG, especially in a game like 2400, participant buy-in is the most important factor in establishing tone. Notice I didn't say GM or player, like everybody needs to be on the same page. Okay, what do we want to do? Do we want a slower game with more resource management? You're gonna have to track every bullet, like the back of the box for the first Resident Evil said, keep that last bullet for yourself, right? Or do we want a faster paced, more cinematic, more action based game in which you're also going to be doing some melee, hand to hand martial arts, knife fighting type of deal, right? Are you going to have a helicopter who blows up gates for you and door guns enemies? I don't know, that's up to you. However, if you want to play a bit on the spectrum, like dance a bit on it, those extra guidelines are there to well, guide you along, right? There's no hard and fast rule on how to do this. I don't claim to invent one. I believe attempting to invent one would be a bad idea. You're gonna need to find your own way through this issue. Okay, what I've also tried to do with this, I've also tried to add as many variant monsters as possible, right? So maybe after a short while zombies get back up and they have this very strongly, intensely red coloring to their skin and to their heads. I don't want to say that their heads are crimson. I've called them hyperemic aggressors, right? Instead of crimson heads as they were in the first Resident Evil, the remake to the first Resident Evil, of course. Plant zombies, fungal zombies. So there's variants to that and a lot of suggestions on how to handle certain monsters, staying as true as possible to the source material. Okay, so these Resident Evil games and the other sources I've mentioned, while, not trying to make it too corny, right? Those are all suggestions. Every time you see the words consider underlined, that's a variant. Check it out. Now, while this more, let's call it didactic approach, veers a bit off 24xx's deliberately minimalist style. If you check out the OSR, you'll see that Mr. Tocci himself recommends doing something a little more vague, right? So he says, I've left some things deliberately vague so people will, approach them however they want at the table. That's a good thing. Biological Hazard veers a bit off that, not that it tells you how to do things, but that it gives you, or attempts to give you, more options. You're obviously free to discard these. If you don't like my ideas, throw them away. I won't mind, okay? But I do believe that the target audience, which is fans of the Resident Evil games and other similar media, will, I hope, appreciate. Okay, cool. What next? Right, so a short talk about what's going to happen with the podcast, and that depends a lot on what all of you want to see, right? I'm going to finish the Romanian series about GMing. There's a ways to go with that. I'm not sure if I'm halfway done with it yet, but people who know me know that I, come up with new ideas faster than I actually finish them, so there's that. I'm going to finish the Romanian series on GMing. That's very important to me. I want to give it the attention it deserves. I'm also going to work on another 24xx game. I've had a lot of fun making this one, and I have an old Borg hack. It was more of a pirate Borg than a Merc Borg hack, but there's that older game that actually named this podcast MERCENAR. It's just lying around. It deserves more love, and I do feel that it's time for it to get the proper shine. So I'm gonna be working on that, probably in both Romanian and English. It's not going to follow the 24xx 4-page format. It's gonna have information. It's gonna be a proper game, right? Okay. It's time for it to get a proper shine. Also, if you want more English content, please let me know. Now would be a time to let me know if you like what I do, and now that you can understand it, hopefully, right? The game itself, now I realize I didn't talk about that. It's not that important to me. The game itself, Biological Hazard, is 100% free. You can get it off the itch link in the description. I believe it's going to be the first itch link. But I accept donations, right? So if you at any time decide, I like this guy's podcast, I don't want to do like the full Patreon thing and give him money any month because he's gonna drink it or something. If you want to make a donation, do it on itch, get a free game with it. Why not? Also, if you want to pay for the game, I'd be very, very happy to notice that. There you go. If you want to donate, do it on the itch page, get a free game. And I believe that's pretty much it for today. I thank everyone for their attention and their interest. I hope you check out the game. I hope you play it. I hope you have a lot of fun with it. And let me know. Let me know down in the comments what you feel about it. Let me know on the itch page, wherever you can get a hold of me, right? All of the links are in their usual places. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Horia Marcan. You have listened to MERCENAR. Hai noroc!